All right, now we have the sail, and the trick is going to be to begin to spray it with some etch so that I can paint it. And I have to say, it looks the part. It really does look extraordinary. It almost looks a bit overdone, but then this is a model, and it is actually quite good to overdo some aspects that you're trying to do. So now I've sprayed the top deck also with etch, and as well as the sail, as you can see. And now this is how it all looks together. I've got to say I'm pretty happy with this overall, even though I'm only halfway there. But it's going to look pretty extraordinary. So now I've cut some fly wire for the sides of the combing. Now this is going to be quite a process. One of the ways of doing this is to keep your blade actually in the fly wire and just count off the notches as they go by. It's one way of cutting what is the rectangle out of here. Of course, I didn't really plan on trying to do it on such a large piece. I ended up doing all of this inside on the kitchen table with a cutting board underneath, because it enabled me to swing it around and turn it a lot more easily than in the shed like this. Of course, my wife thought and probably still thinks I'm a little mad, but there you go. Takes a while, but this is the result. As you can see, it is just a shell of rectangles. Fascinating, and some of them have come away and some of them have been cut, but I'm okay with that because we will fix that as we go. Now I've put the top deck planking on, and what I've done is I've just run some bog around the top because it actually is a round connection. Alright, so this process always takes some time. I'm using fine grade in sandpaper here, but it's really nice. It's coming up very smoothly indeed. And I'm also sanding back the anchor area, as you can see, and it's coming out all right. Pleased. So once that's done, now we begin to spray the whole thing again with etch. And this is useful for a number of reasons. One is to paint on, but the other is it really shows you what the final finish looks like overall, and it's the best way of seeing it, especially when you've got multi-colours of bog and plastic and all sorts of things. So now I have to build the area that the crew stand in, which is basically the bridge, and I'm using there some flashing just to make the nice shape underneath there, and it's done. I just have to grind that off in the drill. And I actually now went to the model shop and I purchased this tank because, as you can see, I need the wheel on the top of my hatches. So I've used, that's an expensive way of finding little wheels, but I've got other purposes for those as well. So here we are fitting the bridge. That's going to be glued in, and then I'm going to sand it back. I've also put the tail on the end of the bridge, as you can see, on the end of the sail, those white plastic parts. And now comes the big moment. I'm going to start to stick this down. So the first thing to do is just make sure it all fits, and very carefully work out how it's all going to sit, because it's got to look even along the side of the boat. You don't want them sloping down or sloping up, and I've got to make sure all of that will work, and which piece of the fly screen I'm going to work to keep level with the top deck. So I've measured it, and now I'm gluing it on. I'm just going to glue it on in stages, as you can see, and I'm pretty happy with that. Now it's dried, and the process is now with the scalpel just cutting these little bits of fly screen off individually. I'm pretty much making this up as I go along, and there's no right or wrong way of doing this, but as I figure it out, I get better at it, I have to say. So you'll notice that, I mean, this is what scratch building's all about. You work things out as you go, and your technique improves as you go. Now I've got the stern section also mounted onto the coaming, and now this is what I do. Just get this is while it's setting onto the epoxy. Just take a nice sharp screwdriver and press the little bits down. Make sure they're all square. Make sure they're all fitting, so that it'll dry off, and then you can use a scalpel and trim it all back. But obviously I've got to cut it through where the slots are. This is a bit in reverse now, so this is the other side. I'm just showing you how I do it, just using my finger to smear on the epoxy, get a fairly fine layer on there, just to attach the fly screen. It's a process where, you know, as I've said on many occasions, it's a matter of sucking it and seeing. Now I've cut this other side into sections because I noticed that there was an inconsistency in how the slots were cut, and I'm just going to very carefully line them all up. And you've got 10 minutes to do this. It's a bit too short a time for the whole side. Now I've put more epoxy over the bow section here, and this is the fly screen. This is the first time I've ever done this, and using a big sheet with dry hands means that I've not got any glue on my fingers at all, and it means that I can play with this with some care. Now you have to get the air out. It doesn't really take all that long to do that. You just take some care and push it in and make sure that it's all... Now this is all working fairly well. I did notice that it was good as I went on to cut those extra sheets off as I went, but here not so. Now I'm doing the stern, and this is the second sheet I'm putting on over the top of the first. I decided to do 2 layers to make those slots less noticeable. It gives it a very interesting feel when you have 2 layers of aluminium foil on there, because the glue actually holds it out a little bit further, and it means you still get that pattern, but you get other shapes as well. Now the trick, of course, is to get all of the air out of this. Don't want any air in here at all, and just gradually get it all nice and flat and down, and then get the scalpel out, obviously, and trim it back. It's quite a different look having 2 layers than having 1, I've noticed. And this is now the stern section. I'm doing it in 2 halves. And I put the stern one on first, and then I do the bow one, because I want the leading edge to trail back. I don't want it to peel back with water. Not that that would be a possibility, but you just have to think these things through. Once again, you've got this window of 10 minutes to work it all through and make it all fit nicely. And I'm just taking every opportunity I can to get this as right as I can before starting to slice back the material. Now that stern part has been done. As you can see, I have yet to do the bow section now, but that's looking pretty good. I'm pretty happy with that. Just checking it all out now, turning it around, and I think I'm about ready to do the bow section on the other side. That's right. Just working from one side to another. Trim that back first. Now that it's all dry, see, it looks really great. It looks really nice. Whereas the 1 layer of alfoil, I think, is a bit too dramatic. It works really well on the sail, though. I think you have to admit that. I think the metal on the sail would be a lot thinner. Now, yes, that's it. That's how it looks, and that's how the whole thing is going to look once I've added its extra layer.